here. Hey guys, welcome back to the Life with Nick podcast. We are here with my guest, Austin Fiedler, and thank you for the grace on the last name. But I actually met Austin very organically through a total rejuvenation service that we will unpack a little bit in this conversation. But at any rate, Austin, what's going on, man?
Hey man, how's it going? Sorry, I gotta correct you. It's Flieder. Flieder.
Flieder.
Yep,
Okay.
that's okay. It literally happens all the time, so it's not a big deal.
Well, thank you for the correction there. And as you'll find, I'm good with like visuals and communicating in person, but sometimes my spelling and pronunciation can struggle a bit. But my last name
No
is
problem.
Kleitch, so that's not necessarily a walk in the park either.
Yep.
Cool, man. So we're gonna actually start off in a unique place, and we'll get to your background and whatnot. But one thing that I found very interesting was your backpacking trips journey, kind of the origins and premise behind that. So why don't we start here? What was the origins of you desiring to even do this in the first place? And then as it builds, I'm sure there may be other tracks, or I remember you mentioning a solo trip here recently. So start us from the kind of base level, and then I'm sure we'll work through to today or the most recent trip.
Sure. So I think like the origins of it is I've been kind of like an outdoors type of person for my entire life. So my family has a cabin up in northern Minnesota, out of Grand Marais, on a trail called the Gunflint Trail. It's basically leading up towards the Boundary Waters,
Okay.
and so imagine the very tip of Minnesota, like the very very tip, right next to Canada, is like the county that we have our cabin in, and we used to go up there every year for like a month or two at a time in the summer. And so I, from a really young age, was like accustomed to going outside and camping, hiking, canoeing, and doing all that stuff. And I had a lot of my formative experience up there. And so I felt very connected to nature in that way. And so I like grew up, I did Boy Scouts, did like camping, merit badge, did all that good stuff. I never made it to Eagle Scout. I aged out. I got into sports in high school, and so that kind of dropped off. But it still like reinforced my love for the outdoors and like doing camping and backpacking. And the way that I really started like doing like more extended trips and like kind of into the backcountry and doing road trips and stuff was a friend of mine, who I consider to be my closest friend. His name is Ryan. He also was like into nature, camping, hiking, and stuff like that. And we just one like school year, we both went to the University of Iowa, and probably about like my sophomore year, his freshman year, we decided that it would be cool to like go on a trip, and just pack all our stuff on our back and like figure it out. And so
Oh yeah.
we like me and Ryan and two other friends just packed up in my like Toyota 4Runner, packed up all our stuff, and then like found a place that was recommended to me by another friend, and we like just kind of headed out into the unknown. We didn't have a map, and we
Oh
didn't
man.
have a GPS. That was pretty foolish. We ended up being okay on that trip. It was kind of funny. We had this joke. So we started heading. We kind of knew where we were gonna go, and when you're out there in such wide open space, you can kind of orienteer and like kind of see where you're headed. And we
Okay.
started heading in a direction we didn't think was the right direction, and so you come to like a switchback, and we're like, okay, like we've already gone like 2 or 3 miles. We got like way too much weight on our back. And so like, do we turn back and try to go back and then up a different way? Or do we just keep going and try to figure it out? And this guy just like rounded the corner, and we just stopped him and asked him like, hey, like, are we headed in the right direction? And he's like, you don't have a map? And we're like, no. And he ended up like giving us a map, telling us like there were some cool places up for like another mile or two. And that trip, like, we came up over a switchback. There was a storm rolling in, and we were kind of worried about it. So we like hoofed it down the mountain a little bit because you don't want to be caught up above the tree line in lightning. We were smart enough to know that, and we ended up having like a really amazing time there, and that really was what kicked off me wanting to do this every year. And so just as like a part of my like self-care and part of just like the way that I reconnect with myself and with nature is I like dedicate at least 1 week a year to going on a backpacking trip. And so I've been going on a extended backpacking trip for the past 6, 7 years now.
Oh, that's
And so yeah,
awesome.
that's kind of the origin story of it.
Well, I love it because I have been out west before, and not that that's the only place where you can go out and do that, but I just feel like there is something that calls to us in our DNA when you get to the mountains, that it's like, okay, this is what our forefathers and mothers were having to work through, and they were doing it without cars and roads and all the luxury items. So
Yeah.
it's cool for you to touch on that a bit. One question. So you had mentioned going up north, and you'd be there for maybe a month or two at a time. What do your parents do for work to allow for that? That's kind of an interesting break in the action. Normally, people don't
Yeah.
get a luxury of a month off, let's say.
So, so my father was, uh, he retired when I was in first grade. He had me when he was like 55. And so he was married before he met my mom. His first wife passed away in a drunk driving accident,
Mm.
and so he like ended up having a family later in life. She was hit by a drunk driver essentially, and so that was really tough for him. I know, but he ended up getting married a second time to my mom, and he was retired, so he would had plenty
Okay.
of free time. He is turning 80 in June actually, and he's like he's still like really active and like with it mentally. He doesn't have any assistive devices. He lives by himself. He like is pretty independent still. I actually saw him about like last week, and he's still doing really good. So that's I'm fortunate for that. But my mom was a school teacher. My mom retired in 2021
Okay.
from the Marion Independent School District. She had her entire career there,
Wow.
and she started her career in middle school language arts. Then she mainly did sixth, seventh grade language arts and reading. And then she ended her career the last probably like 10 years. She did like talented and gifted program for Marion School District. So they had summers off, and that was something that like
Ah.
we all like loved to do as a family, go up there. And so yeah,
Yeah, that makes total sense now, because I was like, man, I know a lot of people in a lot of different occupations, but I don't know of many that get the whole, like a whole month off, per se. So,
yeah.
um, man, that's a pretty crazy sidebar too for your dad. I'm glad that he was able to continue to persevere through that, and those events are always very frustrating to hear, but a part of someone's story, and I'm
Mhm.
sure that's helped him from a parenting perspective as well, just giving life lessons or value. I don't know if you feel that or not, but I just feel like that could be a good space to help, when you are growing up and becoming a man, and how to handle adversity and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that is the one thing that I really have taken from my dad was he is like amazing at taking like any situation and being positive about it. And that's like one of the biggest lessons I like took from him growing up is that he's just been through a lot. I mean, he was in the Vietnam War. He like, he lost his first wife. Like he had a lot of things happen to him, but he is like the nicest, like kindest person. And whether the situation's small or large, like he is so good at reframing his perspective and like remaining positive. And that's something I like really hold dearly that he taught me.
It's a huge thing. It really is. And
Yeah.
just to be around someone like that can soak in that stuff. I mean, as I'm getting to be older, and just being cohesive with adults and in different walks of life, I mean, not many people can truly have the emotional intelligence to be able to handle some of that stuff and convey it on to the next generation. And so kudos to him for doing that. But just to swing back to the first trip here, I do find it funny that when you guys were going out, you did not have a map in any way, shape, or form. Sounds like something I would do, honestly, where I'm like, oh man, we'll figure it out when we get there. But I do sense that is a very important piece as you have gotten into your backpacking trips since.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. No, it was I think it was just one of those like, overconfidence. I was like probably what, like 18, 19, 20-ish. So I was just overconfident. And also like I was like, oh, my friend's been there. He described it to me what it was like supposed to be, just like, like a 2 mile, 500-foot elevation gain type of hike, which is not much. And so he's like, oh yeah, you just park at this place and you just head on the trail and you get there and that's it. And so I was like, oh, we're good. And I don't know why I just thought that no map would have been a good idea. But now I I mean, since then for sure, but now like I have, I always purchase, and they have National Geographic maps that are like waterproof, like durable fabric. I always purchase those maps. Like they cost like $15. It's so worth it. And purchase those for sure, but I also like have gotten into using GPS tracking. And so that's been like, that honestly was kind of a big game changer for me. And I use that like I just have like a Garmin watch that I wear all the time, and I honestly use that GPS feature and that like tracking as kind of just a way to like ground myself also. If
Okay.
I'm doing an activity, if I'm out in a place I don't know where I am, it's something that I've used to like kind of bring me back, give me like comfort that I can find my way back if I had to.
Gotcha. That's
Hmm.
I feel like that's something that as you do, let's say I noticed snowboarding for yourself. I love skiing and just various needed tools when you're out doing some of those things. And sometimes people think you can do just the kind of standard stuff, and you can if you're doing it like let's say once or twice. But if you're going to get serious about that kind of stuff, it does pay dividends to have the right technology and
Hmm.
up to date stuff to just make the experience more comfortable and safe and whatnot. But
Absolutely.
so when you and your friends are out there, and I know that nature connection is important to you, is it more so just trying to gain a form of perspective with being outside that makes you feel grounded, or I just am very curious about that particular thing, just because everyone has their own capacity to try to find that mental clarity.
Yeah. So I think for me, um, there's something about putting everything that you need on your back, and then, looking far into the distance and being like, I'm going to go there. And then the process of actually doing that, I find that like when I start on a hike, I'm excited and stuff like that, but then you get into this rhythm and almost like a meditative state of like your
Mm,
pace of walking. You, I've gotten to the point where like, I know what my pace would be with a certain amount of weight on my back, how much elevation I can do. And so you kind of like get in this rhythm, and that rhythm of you walking, but also of you like relying on yourself and relying around the people around you really just brings your perspective in and on things that are really important. And so that like kind of feeling, it's very intangible. It's sort of hard to describe, but you are doing something physically hard. So, you have to push yourself mentally to do that. Anything, anybody that participates in endurance will like understand that. I'm sure you do, where you just have to like fight with yourself. And, but also like, uh, I think that like doing something hard, being out there, even if it's by yourself, but with your friends and you're relying on each other, that's like something that we don't get so much of in like our everyday lives. We can
mm,
be highly independent. You can be fully self-sustaining and never talk to another person or have to rely on them. And so that's another thing that really helps like ground you, connect you to like yourself, but also the people around you. So you kind of realize how valuable the people around you are, but also like it just really brings you back to basics. Like I need to eat, I need clean water, I need a dry place to sleep. Like all those things that we take for granted. You put yourself in that position where you have to like rely on yourself to provide those basic needs for yourself, and that coming back really lasts for me. And that's something I've been able to tune into. I think because I consciously focus on that, that's something I noticed even from the first time I went out there, and that's something that I've been kind of like chasing since I first like went out and did an extended trip. And so those are kind of the things I think. Went on a little tangent, but that's how I would
no,
answer
you're
that
good.
for
You're
sure.
good. Yeah, I was leading you. Excuse me. I was leading you that way, so don't feel bad about expanding on that a
Sweet.
little bit. And yeah, I think that um, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on the spectrum, life day to day is going to get even more easy and accessible and not challenge us to do those things. So the fact that you've done that at a younger age, I think is very powerful. But to really get there at least once a year, going back to kind of the way you view maybe an annual or biannual trip, yeah, it makes a lot of the accessibility of modern life like, okay, I can be very grateful for these things. And I really do appreciate that as well, because one thing that I like to do is really contextualize history. And when I go out and do some skiing or some hiking or whatever the case is, just knowing that we have these things we rely on, and yet there was an entire, most of human history actually, they're just literally out there with no point of reference and they just have to survive. And that to me is just super hardcore. And like, I couldn't even imagine going through something like that. So, that's why I wanted to dig in a little bit, just because I
Hmm.
think that you're honoring that in some way, in addition to spending some good quality time with your friends.
Yeah,
Um, Now, from the group trip, are there more group trips before the first solo, or what's the kind of maybe patch between this first solo and other trips?
sure. So I've kind of just had a group of people that were like willing to go. I've gone with Ryan, like my best buddy, gone with him every year. And this past year, so in 2022 in the summer, um, and he's in grad school. He's just like got a bunch of stuff going on, and so like he just couldn't make it out with me. And I made a commitment to myself that I would do this every year. And so I was like, you know what, like this is a good time to try and do it by myself. And I like made sure to prepare and as much as I could. I'd been on a few of these. I went to a place that I'd been before, and so I was familiar with the terrain and familiar with where I was going to camp. I figured that was probably just a safe option because I don't know exactly tell you exactly where it is, but it's if you look at a map of Colorado and you find Breckenridge, there is a large valley that's like very close to the Continental Divide that goes if you there's a highway that goes straight down to Leadville. It's in between Breckenridge and Leadville. So if you know for context, and so I'd been there before, and I'd gone with friends a lot before, and it was kind of like a bonding, like fun road trip thing to do. But this one, I was a little disappointed I wasn't going with anybody, but also I kind of just took it as like kind of a personal challenge to be able to do it by myself. And like uh, I've been out of college for a couple years now. I'm like trying to get my career started, and like I thought it was just something that would help me to like kind of refocus on the things that are important and like kind of build some confidence in myself as well. And so that's kind of what led me to it. And so is that commitment to myself to do it every year because I know that I need it, and also like just kind of a challenge to prove to myself that I can.
Yeah, that's a thing of beauty. What were some lessons, I do have to ask, just on
Sure.
the length of trip and maybe the voices in your head and all that good stuff?
So, so some of the lessons. So I consider myself an introvert. It might not seem like it, but I consider myself an introvert. There are times when I gain energy from being around people, but most of the time I am like drained by being social. And so I kind of was like, oh, like this will probably be good. I recharge by myself, so this will probably be good. I learned that I really do value having people around because I thought that I was gonna like get up there and be like, oh my gosh, I never want to leave. And it was like that for probably like the first day. I was up there for 4 days.
Oh man.
Like so I camped for 3 nights, 4 days. And by the third day, I was like, okay, like I could stand talking to somebody. I could stand talking to somebody right now. It wasn't absolutely horrible, but it kind of taught me that like, I like as a kind of a byproduct of like having anxiety and depression issues, like I isolate. It's kind of a common thing with people that have like high anxiety. You avoid situations that bring you anxiety. A lot of social situations would bring me anxiety, so I
Mm.
would kind of isolate myself. And I had this sort of like narrative that I was like that was okay because I was introverted and I just needed the energy to bring back that energy. But going up there, that really taught me that like it just taught me the value of being around people and like how much they do give to me. And I know that we're all social creatures and we do need to be around people, but it kind of like helped get rid of that like thought in my head that like I didn't need anyone. You
That's
know,
very
and it
powerful.
yeah, and so that was definitely something that I've like taken with me since then. And let's see, another lesson. A big lesson was that I was like, I got this because I really have like honed in my like all my gear and my techniques and like like I don't train like hard, but I do train for those things because I want to be able to take advantage of that time up there and also like be in as good a shape as I can. And so like I had a good training regimen. It wasn't anything crazy. It was like elevated walks with like weights and
Sure.
just like making sure to keep a little bit of cardio. And so like, you know, inclined walks so that it's replicating somewhat of the grade that I'm walking at. It was kind of the main thing that I did besides just like basic lifting and stuff. And so I felt really good. I had all the gear that I needed. I had my, you know, system set up. I like have a gravity feed water system. I have like a nice tent that I invested money in. You know, I have a good sleeping bag, good clothes, like all the things that I needed were there. And that like made me feel proud of like something I've been working at for a long time.
Yeah.
So that was good. I think also, um, hmm, if I think of one, I'll come back to it. I'm sure there was more, but those are kind of the big things. That one I shared at the beginning was really the big one that stuck with me, and that I
Yeah.
still pull upon.
Well, I was just say, I'm sure just amidst other conversation points you'll be like, oh my gosh, I remember what was trying to maybe say earlier or whatnot. But,
Yeah,
so
real
before
quick.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, perfect time to stop. I think that the package is here.
Okay, perfect. I'll just chill out for a
Perfect
little
time to
bit.
stop.
Okay.
So give me like 5 minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah, you're good, man. I got us
Thank
at
you.
the 20-minute marker. So you're good.
Thank you. I'll be right back.
Cool.
All right, I'm back. Thank you for the patience. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let me jot down here so that we're at 27, 28 roughly. Okay, cool. So I'll just kind of naturally cue back to what we were talking about, and then it'll be a pretty quick fix. Um, Let me think where to start actually. I know where we were talking, but um,
I had lessons that I learned, and I kind of wrapped up, and you had a follow-up question about like
oh
the lessons.
yes, yes, okay. Um, Sorry, now I'm gonna put down 29, so that way all this is within that. Okay, perfect. So getting back to just some of the lessons that you learned, one thing that I want to kind of unpack just a little bit further. So as far as the solo trip, the mental overcoming of adversity, let's say, and realizing the social piece and how that comes into what was maybe a prior narrative, did you struggle with anxiety and depression for a while, and then this experience kind of exacerbated the separation there? And I asked this question in a way of learning first and then being able to understand why it was so meaningful, maybe is another way of
Sure.
phrasing it.
So, so it didn't like necessarily exacerbate like any of the symptoms. I just like uh when you're out and like by yourself, I just was like very attuned to what was going on and within my body and like what I was thinking and like I was just with myself, so I had to just face myself. And it's not that it like exacerbated them; it just made me take a different perspective on like that narrative that I had previously held. Because like I said, going into it, I had thought that I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. I'm just gonna, I'll be fine. And then like that intention sort of going into it, what like came into question. That's really just it just made me take pause and like think and like kind of change how like I actually feel that I truly feel about that.
Mm.
Um, and it just made me value those like social situations more. Like I'm not like I'm not like deprived of social interaction, you know. I do have like good friends and like I have like a few friend groups, like some from high school, some from college, and like some from after. And so it's not like I don't know. I think I just devalued it, and because I thought like, oh, this is great, but I like really only need myself. But that like came into question and like made me kind of take perspective on it when I went on this trip because like I came out of it like really excited and like really like valuing the people that I have in my life.
Mm.
That was kind of it was kind of a more of a perspective shift rather than like an exacerbation. I've been like learning to like cope with and like live with anxiety, depression stuff for a very long time. I've been going to therapy for like over 10 years pretty
Oh wow,
consistently.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
I started going to therapy when I was 15, when my parents got divorced. And I only ever took about like a month or two off at a time in that entire 10-year span.
Wow, that's so
Yeah,
great. Just admiring your
yeah.
dedication to that because I know many people that have started and fallen off or not given it its true potential for what it
hmm
sounds like you found it for, which is great.
Yeah, and like to be frank with you, like I've made more progress in the last like 2 years, 2.5 years than I did in like the previous eight.
Wow.
And that's something just that like I learned through going through the process. Like I was very lucky that like my parents valued and like accepted going to therapy and like seeking psychiatric help. And so they were like encouraging of me to do it. And I knew that it was important for me. And I'm a very like introspective person. And so it was good to be in a room with somebody that's trained to process those things. And
Mm,
so I knew that it was a valuable thing, but like something that a lot of people that go to therapy know, it's like it's very hard because you have to find somebody that you like click with enough that you trust them to be able to open yourself up, but also that are able to like do their job well And not to say that all those practitioners aren't good, but maybe their style isn't your style, and they're a great person, they do well, but it just doesn't click. And that's the thing that's frustrating, and that's why I like tell everybody that I'm around that even if you're in a good place, it's good to like find, if you're willing, find somebody and look for that while you're not in a crisis. Because the thing that really sucks is when you're in a crisis and you really need help, and now you have to go into an office, and it takes like hours and hours. It takes like a month or two, three, sometimes like 6 months to really like get your rapport down with the person.
Mm,
You can't just walk into a therapy office and they like instantly help you. You have to explain your life story. No matter how open you are, there's layers you have to peel back with someone as you feel more comfortable with them. And then so imagine the first like couple years of me going to therapy, it was like just trying to find the right person. Like I would go for like three,
wow.
4 months and then like get frustrated because I like wasn't it wasn't working for me. And then I'd have to go for another person. Now you're starting cold.
Mm,
And that's just an exhausting process, you know?
right.
And so like that, I really, yeah, I'm just like big into people like trying to like start that when they're not in a position where they like are desperately needing it, because that it's just, unfortunately it's just the way that it is, and I don't know if there's much to do to fix it. That and like it takes a lot of energy and time to be able to like make it work well. So, not that it has to take 10 years, but it happened to take about 8 7 8 years for me to like find someone I really clicked with, and then build rapport and like build on the things that I'd learned previously, be able to have good strategies and like good ways of thinking. So yeah.
Well, from a third party perspective, me not just hearing this for the first time and it being completely raw, first off, you must have some bit of resilience in you for you to continue to fight and scratch and claw for that amount of time to really get the full experience and get to where you are now. And I just love that in human beings that can show that, because a lot of people quit during any endeavor. Generally, that gets a little challenging. So for you to stick with it is awesome. I am also very curious because in my line of work, I deal a lot with human psychology, and I got into reading a while ago. I've read a lot of different books on the subject, would never consider myself to be an expert there, but I love the self-diagnosis of asking great questions and really thinking for yourself. And much like yourself, I struggle almost too much on the introspective side of the spectrum, where it's like I spend too much time analyzing some of that stuff. Where I'm going with this is, did you feel that there was either a singular aha moment with this kind of coming out of progress, or what was that like? Because I'm always curious on that, and sometimes when you make those revelations, I feel like you said, you worked 8 years and there's, let's say, little progress, and all of a sudden just it trickles out into something beautiful.
Yeah. So uh the story's kind of interesting. I let's see how I the story's kind of interesting. So a couple few years ago, probably like I want to say like 2019, like late like November 2019. I graduated from the University of Iowa in May of 2019, and then I had like a lot of stuff going on with my family, and like I've been going to therapy, but it was kind of like I didn't really care for the person I was with. It was kind of just in to get me by. And I got referred to a guy just through like a mutual like family friend, and he like was willing to accept me. He's like technically not a full-time therapist. He's licensed and certified, but he like has another job and he kind of moonlights as this. And
Mm,
so he didn't have a very big caseload, and he wasn't accepting people at the time actually, but he made an exception because he was good friends with my family friend. And that like started it because this guy who I currently see every week or every other week, depending, he was able to, I was able to very quickly identify with him and see eye to eye intellectually. And I had also been through a few rounds of giving rapport at this point. I think I went through like 4 or 5 therapists in that amount of time. And so I kind of was like going into this like, I kind of know what I'm doing here. And so like I was able to quickly establish rapport and like see eye to eye with this person, and that really is what kicked it off. I was struggling a lot at that time, getting out of college, not really know what I want to do,
Mm,
and like trying to figure it out. I went to college for went to college, got a degree in human physiology, and wanted to go to physical therapy school until my senior year. When I was like finished with all the prereqs and I was applying to programs, I like just knew that that wasn't something I wanted to keep doing, and so I like made the decision to not go. And but that did lead me into like feeling lost and not knowing what I was
mm,
gonna do, and so that like put me in a bad place. But I was able to come and connect with this guy, and over that first year, really the first year was just kind of like laying the foundation, and then I stabilized. I got my job at Total Rejuvenation. I, started working on other things in my life and like started trying to carve out a path. He really helped me find. He helped me find within myself the ability to commit to something and just see it through. That
mm.
was a big thing. And like for me, when I was at that point, I was just like bouncing around. There's so many different, when you're in that point of your life, there's just so many different directions you can go in,
Right.
that I was just like paralysis by analysis, all of these different directions. I had all these interests, but I didn't know like if, you just second guess yourself, you're new into the world. And so he really like helped solidify for me that like you want to look for something that you'd be good at, because if something that you're good at, you will eventually grow to love it, even if you don't love it initially. Having like a quote unquote like passion for something is great, but you change and develop through your life. And like if you can focus on something, especially for like a vocation that you're good at doing, that you have skills that you can see yourself doing well in that was something that he really like reinforced with me, and that helped me a lot to like pick a direction now that I'm happy with. And like um, but as far as like making this turnaround, so first year laying the groundwork, second year is 2022. I I was like feeling good about where I was going, and I started was kind of like slowly on an upward trend. But like truly, there was like 1 week that like really turned the tide for me. And it was like, it was kind of going linearly, and then it went exponentially after this week, and it was going to Electric Forest in Michigan in 2022.
Wow.
Yes, 2022. It was going to Electric Forest, the music festival. Um, I have seen like a marked uh, improvement in my like just outlook on life and my like general perspective and my baseline like happiness just from that experience. Um, it truly was like it sounds like weird, but I guess I don't care. It happened and I'm happy about it. But
Yeah.
it was truly like one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. It made me it one of the big things I took away from it was I really felt like secure in my adulthood for the first time.
Wow.
I
That's
had done a
awesome.
lot of preparation to go to this. I've been on camping trips. I've led groups of people, on different things, and like so, I was kind of one of the pillars of like stability in the group, and I felt really good about that position. I was happy that people could rely on me to support them, and they would support me in kind. And that was a big thing. That was probably the first time that I like really felt like confident in my adulthood as a young man. I I experienced there like it's kind of hard to describe, but the way that I put into a metaphor is that it is like uh, previously I had consciously known that I'd consciously known that like you like can give love and be loving to other people, but I think like deep down I had regarded it as a tangible resource, and thus it was
Hmm.
highly valuable because of its scarcity, and that because I had this internal belief. It wasn't materialized like that. It's in hindsight that I realized that, but
Sure.
I viewed it as as a thing that needed to be guarded and needed to be kept and needed to be very sparingly given. And it's not like I wasn't loving and giving to people, but I had held this belief that it was finite. And when I was
Wow.
there, I really uh, fully internalized the the fact of which I believe is that like love is an infinite resource, and you are able to generate as much of it as you want for whoever you want, and there's nothing wrong or like innately bad about sharing it. It's in fact like multiplies itself when you share it. And I like fully realized that while I was there, and that alone like has changed my for real changed my life. And I think about that every day. I yeah, and so that was like something that was really amazing to me. And the metaphor I was referring to earlier was I felt like the door to like me, my consciousness, like opened wide, and just
Wow.
flooding out of it was like just love, infinite. And that like metaphor in my head made me realize, like, oh my God, I'm like, I am an infinite well of this. Like, I don't need
Mm,
to safeguard this at all. I've had a lot of problems in my life, like letting people in. I'm a very like open, giving person, but I get hurt easily.
mm,
And so I think over time I kind of like was like, oh, I gotta guard myself a little bit. But this experience really helped me like open up to that like realization that it doesn't matter because I got plenty of it, and it's
wow.
both valuable and plentiful. And so that since that day, I have not. I've gone through like depressive episodes like normal people do. You know,
Mhm,
things happen to you, and like you go through times when you feel that. And I'm very acquainted with myself, my body, and my reactions to depression because I've had it for a long time. And so I knew those things were coming, but in the past there was always this like air of like this could never go away. Like that was I was dreading that aspect
mm,
of it. But now my perspective on it is there's just it's like it took the legs out from underneath that belief. And like things come up and I go through the like episodes just like any other person, but I like in deeply in my core believe that it's it's not it's finite and that it will pass. And that like realization has helped me just so much like make that curve exponential.
wow,
So
man,
that's how it
that's
answered.
well,
Yeah.
no, I love that story so much. Just for the folks that are listening to this or will, I did not have that kind of piece to the pie with our script, and I am so grateful when things come up just organically to like I'm literally learning this with you, and um, I feel like one thing that is very challenging for people is being able to let that in or give it out, depending on what end of the spectrum you're on.
Hmm.
So for you to really go through that and to feel, um, and I think maybe this is a little bit to your kind of um, connection with nature in some sense, but just knowing the connectivity of everything that the universal sentiment, like you were talking about. I'll add a small story here and then I'll bring us back. It does relate a little bit, but
Cool.
so my cousin went to a trip to Colorado, and he did take mushrooms for this concert. So that was something that was under the influence. But one thing that I thought was super interesting about this is that at one point he could feel and see people's energy in that state of mind. And I have heard about things like that. I've never done it. I do want to do it at some point, but what really was his takeaway is like there truly are great people out there that genuinely care about you and love you unconditionally, even though you're a complete stranger. And then there's people that truly don't like you and that are trying to cut you at the knees, and they don't give a shit about anything. So to pair that in with what you were mentioning, did you get an essence of that, like that universal love and just being around the people with positive energy, maybe,
Hmm.
and take that and run with it as you so choose? But I
Sure.
just feel like it's somewhat applicable to that.
So I may or may not have experienced a similar thing as your friend, and I may or may not have experienced a similar thing at Electric Forest. But I think that uh, that understanding that universal truth and not taking it personally when people don't like you, and being willing to accept and be able to like recognize the people that do like love you unconditionally. Those two things, like, I'm not going to say that I perfectly mastered that, but I think that that is like a really important thing. And at a place like a music festival, um, I've been to quite a few music festivals, and like Electric Forest sticks out to me because of like the culture surrounding it. Um, I didn't have these realizations like by myself. It was the environment that I was in for sure that really helped me. When you're there, the random person, I was standing in line for a shower, and I like made just great friends with this guy. Just like everybody's so excited to be there. We ended up seeing each other in like at one of the concerts later. These like amazing synchronicities happen that just
Mhm.
like things just work out. Everybody's in like excited, everybody's in a good mood, everybody's wanting to share their love with other people, wanting to help
Yeah.
other people and like all have a good time. That collection of, there's 50, 60,000 people all having the same energy that they give off,
Yeah.
that is like such a powerful thing to be around. And it helps you, guide you to learn these things. Not necessarily everyone's going to have this same experience there, but I think that there is absolutely something to having such a large group of people all in one place sharing a similar sentiment of like giving love and like happiness to others just for the sake of doing it. That really is like a really special thing. And so I guess like, yeah, I could just ran with it, but I like agree with your friend. Like that kind of thing is, I think that we all have it. We have that ability, and like some people are more receptive to it than others. But like I think that you definitely do like give off an energy of yourself, of who you are. And I think that if you, yeah, I don't know where else I'm going with it, but
No,
I
you're
ran with
good.
it.
That's beautiful. You did. You grabbed it and ran with it. And so, two small things, and then we'll move on to. I'd like to talk a little bit on meditation with you,
Sure.
just because I think that's a very fun conversation, and there'll be some other things. But one thing that very recently, actually, I was going to Total Rejuvenation, and I promise for those that are listening with what that is, we'll get to that. But I was doing a float. And within that float, I had no idea that this was going to happen, but I did consume some edibles before that just to kind of get into a very relaxed kind of meditative state. And one thing that I needed so bad was the presence of God for me, to really know that unconditional love is available. And I had been raised Catholic. I have kind of been struggling to find a really concrete religion or spiritual practice. I think this will be ever evolving for me just because I'm such a curious person, and blah blah blah. But when I felt that, and I don't know, maybe it was him creating that in that moment, but it was just such a reassuring reminder, and much like your experience, that there are people that actually can love you unconditionally, even though you feel like a failure, even though you feel like you've hurt people. Like, I don't know, that really made me remind me of that experience. And it's just that feeling is so pure. I don't know. That's like
Mhm.
maybe the only way I can describe it. But if you have anything to expand on, great. If not, I'll throw the other sentiment out there. But that just made me
Yeah.
think of just like the power of when there's not a condition on it. And sometimes we
Yes.
think that that is what people feel like they need to give us conditions, or whatever the
Yeah.
case.
And like I think that there, I think that's just like part of being human, that you, and maybe living where we live, like you start to like over time slowly that chips away. I think when you're young, you're with you, if you're lucky enough to have like loving, caring parents, you experience that unconditional love and you're more receptive to it. But as you grow, you slowly chips away at you, that people want stuff from you, and there's conditions to a lot of things. And like you slowly but surely kind of like lose that grasp on that it is even possible to have like unconditional love like you're talking about. And having experiences like that, I think, are just like infinitely valuable to remind you that that is real, because that's how you, I mean, I think that that's like how you stay connected to your spirituality. That's how you can stay, whatever your spirituality may be. Those kinds of things, and like having that realization is like just so important. And it's also just super cool. It's just
Yeah,
awesome that
it's
we can even have that depth of experience,
Yeah, that's what's so badass, and to be in somewhat of an altered state too, I think greatly enhances that feeling. And maybe on another podcast, we'll come back to that
Sure.
specific topic of conversation. But just to be fair to our time today, we'll move forward. The other thing I was going to throw out very quickly, I read a book called Becoming Supernatural. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza.
I
But
have.
basically, yeah. So essentially, what that book is about, and how, or why I'm bringing it up, is they had basically studied people going through his meditation practices, and he could see just cellular change in their actual chemistry. And so that the power of us having atoms that turn into cells that turn into all that, like, plays into exactly what we're just talking about. So I do believe that there is an actual physical electromagnetic energy that is, provided from you to others and from others to you. And that was a great experience from what it sounds like for you to receive some of that good old fashioned love at that event. So that's great.
Yeah, I
Now,
share that belief
or go
for
ahead.
sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I share that belief. I was just gonna concur with you there because I think uh, just like us, every piece of matter like has, a frequency that it vibrates at, and it interacts with other matter and like leaves an impression, even though it's incredibly minute. And so we are like, an energy creating machine. And so we're inevitably going to be giving off energy, energy naturally disperses in the universe. So, and I think that we like can pick up on that. It's subtle, but it's there.
Yeah, and he points out in the book that when you're in a specific state of receiving, you're able to get a much more, let's say, a larger bite of other people's positive experience coming in. Or if you're in a shitty state, that you're going to kind of press away from and not be able to fully receive some of those
Hmm.
pure emotions. But talk about just a badass life experience, man. I
Yeah.
think that's just so cool to hear that story, because we definitely need to be reminded of unconditional love, and however you receive it is it's still net positive at the end of the day. Just to rotate into meditation a little bit. So first off, I'm curious on just what you have dabbled with in that space, or way how it's maybe relevant to you. This will be probably another good 10 to 15 minutes for us, but I love talking about this and just
Sure.
kind of learning what people do and their practices and how it fits.
So, I've dabbled with a bunch of like apps. I tried Headspace for a little bit. I've done like the YouTube thing. Um, I like frankly, I got on a really good run of doing it a couple years ago. I think I did like an entire year almost. Like I maybe missed a day or two here or there, and all that I did during that time was um, I learned in school that so I'm naturally at an anxious state. So I'm trying to like decrease my arousal has generally been my goal. So if you, if as long as your exhales are longer than your inhales, that activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It upregulates your parasympathetic nervous system. I actually learned that in a class at Iowa. And so I basically just did like the super basic just mindfulness technique where I just imagine. So I'd normally like to lay down, and I'd lay down on a bed or wherever I was. Sometimes I'd be sitting, and I'd imagine that I was looking up at the sky, and all of the clouds in the sky were my thoughts. And sometimes like my thought would come and like encase me, and I'd be lost in the thought, and I'd go down that rabbit hole. But the practice is catching yourself getting lost in thought and captured by the thought, and then forgiving yourself for getting distracted, and then refocusing on that imagery of
Mm,
you're in a field, you're separate from your thoughts, you exist separately from them, and they will inevitably pass. And so
so
that was
good.
like, that's something like that imagery. I tell people, I tell rejuvenation all the time when they're about to float, just to give them like something basic, because I think a lot of people can relate to that. And it's definitely like takes practice. It's hard to do because like you get lost in thought. Just everybody gets lost in thought. But that's kind of the main thing that's kind of been a through line since I've heard about meditation and started was exhales longer than inhales. And I believe like the actual thing they told me in school was 6 seconds out, 4 seconds in.
Okay.
And I believe as long as it's that ratio, it like decreases your arousal. And then and so that I've done the apps, I've done like guided meditations. I recently I've been using the State app. It's $25 a year, and it uses machine learning. It's not exactly AI, but it uses your feedback to like tune it to you. And there's just four different settings. There's like be alert, be calm, uh, sleep, and then there's one more. I haven't looked at the other one. I can't remember off the top of my head. I mainly use the be alert and the be calm, and sometimes the be sleep if I'm anxious before bed. Use the be alert, and gosh, I just started using it a couple weeks ago, so I don't think I could give it to you off the top of my head. But that was one that I've been liking because it's simple. All the exercises are kind of tuned to you. At the very beginning, they ask you questions, kind of like where you're at, and then they time your maximum exhale, so how long you can control an
Wow.
exhale, and then that's how they determine the times of the intervals of inhales, exhales, and holds. And
Gotcha.
so I thought that was really cool. It actually uses like personalized to me and like my physiology, and I'm a physiology nerd. So I've been enjoying that because like so it's like 3 to 5 minutes, and it's just a super bare bones simple app, and you just like hit like in the morning I hit be alert, and I normally will like do that before or after. I like to take a walk in the morning. I know that's a huge thing now, but it's
Oh, it's
great.
legit. It's 100%
Yeah,
legit.
it is. It's like being said a bunch, but that's great because it works really well. When I started doing that, it made me feel a lot better, and it helped circadian rhythms for sure. That was a big thing when I was depressed was the circadian rhythms were off a lot, and it was difficult
Mm,
for me to sleep, and so that makes it difficult to make any progress. And so when that was like one of the big things that helped me there. So I do the be alert. So that's raising arousal. So like longer inhales, shorter exhales, and then I do the be calm. If I'm just in a stressful situation, it's 3 minutes, easy to follow.
so was there a method to the madness as far as your introduction to meditation, or was it just that I had heard it maybe and I'm gonna try to work it in a little bit?
Yeah. So so my mom is very like in tune with that kind of stuff. She like I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think she took me to like a meditation retreat when I was a kid. I don't exactly know, but like she was into all that. We went on a retreat like to do yoga. She was into all this alternative medicine stuff, and so she kind of like got me into it at a young age. And so
Okay.
I'd been interested in it, and then as I went into health and like got like really was fascinated with human physiology and understanding how like we can influence it, that just naturally led to meditation. And so I think that's kind of how I got into it.
Okay.
And I've seen a lot of, I mean, I just started seeing benefit from it relatively quickly. And so like I've been willing to stick with it. I just gotta be honest. I don't do it like every day. I'm not like crazy, like committed to it, but I recognize the value and I do like use it, in times that I need it.
Yeah, well, I think being made aware of it is one thing. But well, and this is a small observation, but just coming back. So it does seem like your mother really did kind of give you good awareness towards some of these practices. And, people can say what they want, but at the end of the day, the thing is that when you're doing these things, when you truly execute on taking an actual walk outside, maybe doing 5 to 10 minutes of meditation, like it's legit. It's not like they're making
Mhm.
this shit up. It's a legitimate benefit to the human experience. And so yeah, so I bring all this up because I have some experiences myself that I wanted to talk to you about a little bit. But just doing a little bit of research before you came on, I noticed that was in your bio, so I figured I'd have to ask about it.
One quick thing I wanted to add about that is like going along with kind of like when you actually put forth the energy and like go do those things. One of the big things that like one of the big things that really helped me like start to work my way out of like that being depressed and anxious and like letting that consume me was let it like rewarding myself for doing those small things mentally.
Mm,
So not like necessarily eating something or like doing something to reward myself to give an artificial hit of dopamine. No matter how small it was and no matter how insignificant I thought I took it, I would tell myself that I was proud of myself and that I was happy that I did it.
wow.
And like by just doing that, and it builds, and I believe it helps build like a belief in yourself and increases your self worth. because you are doing something for you, and like I'm sure you've read in books before that like you would take care of a person on the side of the road probably more easily than you would take care of yourself. And so by like just the, like leaving, going to the gym and then leaving the gym and just taking like 10 seconds in the car to be like, hey, I just did something really good for myself. Like, I'm happy that I did that for myself. And even though maybe you don't like feel a rush of whatever, but it's small and it's there. And by doing that, it adds up over time. And I think that that's like a really important thing that I've learned over these like past few years. So I had to bring it up. Yeah.
No, that's great. I think that the kindness to oneself, and that's probably my biggest pitfall, is that I am ruthless. My monkey brain or whatever, that two voices, whatever, as far as like how you like sabotage yourself, that is by far my number one thing. Is like along with perfectionism, it's okay. We didn't like we're supposed to do this. It's part of the program, and then if I didn't do it perfectly, it's like, well, that was a waste of time. Way to go, Nick. And it's like, dude, first off, let's just take it easy because, like you said, you would never speak to somebody that way. And then also, like, it's a big deal. It's a big deal because I feel like you build
Hmm.
momentum. And to really meditate on that, though, in the actual verb of meditation, like being proud of yourself is huge. Like I know some people can, have their opinions on their level of how proud they can be and build that up. But when you're someone that struggles like mentally at times, just giving that gift of being proud of yourself, I mean, it's like giving the younger version of yourself a hug and like saying, hey,
Yeah.
it's going to be okay. So people can wash that off if they want, but I think that's a legit point.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up. So to go back to just the practice itself, so I have done a variety of different things. I learned very quickly that I was not able to do like a 20-minute meditation right off the bat. I would definitely recommend what you were pointing out, the 3 to 5 minutes. I feel like that would be a good starting point. But one recently that I'm on that I'm in love with is the Waking Up app with Sam
Hmm.
Harris. It's a pretty big coin up front. I mean, it's $120 a year, but the cool part about Sam that I've learned is as much as I am still going through my spiritual journey of what I believe in, he in some ways it's not necessarily an atheist, but he more so just believes in what consciousness is.
Hmm.
And so the way he guides that meditation, I think, is very constructive. And to your point, on the thoughts and you laying on your back with the clouds, that's one principle he really talks about is the ability to separate and the ability to begin again. I need to reiterate that like 15 times over in my head, consistently, because just the thought of being able to begin again is going along the same lines of it's okay to be proud of yourself. Like it's okay to
Hmm.
restart and go ahead. So if there's something there that you'd like to run with, go ahead. If not, I just
Yeah.
wanted to bring that up.
Sure. No, I love it. I got scared by the yearly membership thing, but I recognize that it's good, and I used like his I did a free trial of that a while back, and I thought it was good. Um, I don't think I have much on that though. That's all right. We can keep going.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, he does a good job, the best job as an instructor that I've had up until this point. Because
Good.
some are guided, and I think that's really healthy, and that's what he does as well. But others, it's kind of just a touch more on the affirmational side, and it gets a little bit maybe overdone. Whereas he's like legit, like this is the practice of it, and I'm going to teach you
Mhm.
the science and all that good stuff. But yeah, you had that in the old bio, and I figured I'd bring that up really quick to talk about it
Sweet.
because I love it. It's definitely a concentration aid, but just being able to separate your thoughts from yourself, I
Hmm.
think that's a major step. If you haven't done that yet and you're listening to this, definitely stick with it. Um, so we have touched just a little bit lightly on kind of your backstory, the backpacking trip, some of this good stuff. Let's move into the present state with total rejuvenation. So if you want
Sure.
to do just a nice high level overview of that, we might go down the rabbit hole of a couple different practices that you guys offer, but more so just for the listeners to understand what that is. And I think it ties in also to you potentially wanting to own something like this. So I'd like you to
Yeah.
also add that in.
Sure. So, total rejuvenation is what's called a float center. And so, floating is the service that we revolve it around. It's otherwise known as sensory deprivation. And so the premise is that you take away as much sensory input as possible, and that puts you into a meditative state called theta brainwave state. It's the same neurological pattern as when you're dreaming. And that essentially upregulates your parasympathetic or your rest and digest nervous system and decreases your sympathetic nervous system. And you go into a room where you have everything that you need, shower, towels, shampoo, earplugs, everything that you need in there. And then you enter a chamber that has about 10 inches of water, 1,600 pounds of Epsom salt dissolved in the water. And so you're naturally buoyant on the surface. The water and the air temperature is the same temperature as your skin. And so you lose tactile sensation from that. You have a dissociation from your proprioception. So that's your position of your limbs in space. You have the ability to turn the light and the music off, although you still get benefit out of it if you leave light and music on. Um, and this essentially can put someone into a meditative state with little to no effort. And
Mm.
that's kind of the goal of it, is that someone with no experience of meditative states can go in and have a relatively good likelihood of getting into a meditative state without needing years of practice and seeing the benefits. And so I like to tell people it's like a potent meditation session. And so at Total Rejuvenation, we also offer other services. There's 5 total services there. We do sensory deprivation tanks, cryotherapy, infrared sauna, halotherapy, which is replicating a salt cave, and we do Normatec compression therapy. If you want, I can expand on those things too. I have a whole 5-10 minute spiel that I give probably a couple times a week. So, but the main thing that revolves around is floating there. But it's essentially, we consider it a therapeutic recovery center. We have multiple different services that can help you, give you tools to make the most out of recovery and make the most out of your body.
Said beautifully, my friend, said beautifully. As far as just the individual practices, I think for those that are interested, they could probably go and find that individually. I'm not going to waste too much time on that just because I do want to, in some ways, tie us all together with some of the topics of conversation to this. So, you had mentioned the potential of owning something like this. Um, for you to achieve that, do you feel that this is a great kind of stepping stone in that process, or do you feel like there's still a lot of ground that needs to be made up as far as what you would potentially design, or how that looks like? Because I know that
Sure.
anyone can say a goal, say a dream. It's very different living the reality, but I do think just knowing, and going to this place, you guys have a great, exposure to a lot of these good practices. So I'm curious on that front.
Um, so I will tell you, I don't know if I told you this last time you came in. I have since shifted away from wanting to own one of these myself. It was a goal of mine for a while. I have shifted away from it. And I can expand on that if you like, but I can speak to your question though, because I did think about this a lot and I've worked there for 3.5 years now. And I had entered this with the intention of potentially owning one of these. And so, uh, yes, to answer your question, this is a really good stepping stone because this in this industry still relatively small. It's doing really well. Thanks, Joe Rogan. But like doing really well. There's a float center in pretty much every major city, if not more than one. And a lot of them have a similar business model to the one that we have, which is you kind of like offering floating and offer like the environment. That's really the key, is offering like a controlled environment to be able to get into this state, because it's relatively sensitive, and it's easy for you to knock out of it. And so designing an environment to have this, but also having other services to try to make it economically make sense, because
Mm,
like you need at least an hour in a flotation device and frankly, you need more than one session. Like it's kind of a hard sell to people because it's like, they're coming in and like it's a little expensive. And it's time out of your day, that's also valuable. And so, but you kind of do need like at least 2 times in there, because the first
for
time is really
sure.
just getting acclimated to it. So I pretty quickly recognized those barriers. truly the biggest barrier to opening up a facility. And I've had the great fortune of like working with Josh, and it's just been me and him for the past like 3 years. We just hired a third person, and so like it's just been me and him. So I've been very intimately connected to the business, which has been a great gift. Um, but the biggest barriers are the startup costs. It's a relatively expensive like startup cost to design. You have to pretty much specifically design a facility for it. It's not like you can
Mm.
just drop it into any old commercial space. You have to. There's ways that they've been able to develop over the years since Josh has designed his that make it a little bit easier, but the designing process and the investment that comes with it is a large barrier. With that being said, the draw from like more of an economic financial sense is that once you get it up and running, it is relatively low cost of operation, and a relatively high amount of profit margin per service. And it's also like just from a more of like a emotional standpoint, like it's very rewarding to like have people come in on a consistent basis and like really see benefits in their lives from that, and that's like also adds to the value of it. um, but this has been a really good experience for me, and frankly it kind of taught me that I didn't want to do it.
It's all good.
But
I love it.
yeah, but I got into it with like kind of the like uh, just I really enjoy. I draw a lot of life energy from helping people, and this was a way that I could curate an experience, a healing experience for people, and that was really what got me into it. And so I, I've since changed my direction, but I still do like highly value being able to like curate a healing experience for people, and so like that's kind of what drew me to it, and but yeah. So is there anything else you were like interested in? I think that was like my little spiel on it, but any other questions about it, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I'll have some
Sure.
questions that'll carry us to some of the future plans and desire there, because I that's a little bit more kind of new information for me. But I think just from a wonderfully crafted life experience for you, having something that's in our brain at one point of what we want to do, getting into the reality of things, and then having that kind of push us one way or another. It's just that's the beauty of life right there, the journey. And just a small note to, for someone, hopefully it helps them out. But like going through college and all that good stuff, like just absolutely no replacement for real life experience on some of that
Hmm.
stuff. You can preach philosophy on certain things till the cows come home, but until you're in that trench, that's the only way you're really gonna kind of identify if it's legit or not. But getting back more so to you and your story and kind of current state. So walk us through just what has been accomplished here in the short term, and then just some intentionalities with your plans for the future. Both with, I believe, your move, and then also just from a career perspective, it sounds like you're going to go a different route.
Yeah. So I it's kind of really materialized in the past like 6 months, and I've only felt really confident fully pursuing it over the past like frankly like the past few months. But so over the past couple years, while I was working at Total Rejuvenation, I started in like mid 2020. A friend of mine works in like the e-commerce digital marketing space. He works for a company in Cedar Rapids, and he doesn't have a non-compete with this company. And his company, when they would not take on clients because they were too small or it just didn't work, but they still wanted to work with him, he would take them on a freelance basis.
Hmm.
And because of 2020, that like really popped off for him. And so he asked me if I would like be willing to help him. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. I think it'd be cool to like learn. And at this time in my life, I was too kind of being like, I had this thought that like, learning technology and at the very least having a familiarity with it is going to pay dividends off for the rest of my life, because like that's where the future is heading. And so like get on the train or get left behind sort of. Maybe it's not that harsh, but that was kind of my thought. And so I was like, oh, this is kind of a cool experience. And over the past like 2.5 years, we have like been working on building a business, doing like e-commerce consulting, web development, digital marketing, stuff like that. And just over the past like 6 months, we've really kind of gotten dialed in, and we've got some new clients, got new projects. I've been tuning my experience working here as being like a project manager. I've gotten certification, and like that was kind of the direction I like my therapist helped me decide to go in. And so I've been like kind of working on that goal and that pursuit, and that's been incredibly rewarding for me. So as that grew, my like desire to like own my own facility like this waned, and I kind of knew that I was very happy for the experience, but I knew that this was the direction I wanted to go in.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
so my last day at Total Rejuvenation is June 18th.
Wow.
And yes, and I am going to pursue my little side hustle business full time. I know that I'm good for the next 6 months. I have contracts signed and good enough income to support myself for 6 months, and I will figure it out from there. The way that I view it is that I actually am really enjoying the work that I do. I like the clients that I work with. I've really gotten in a good stride over this past 6 months, and it took 2 years to get there, but I stuck with it, and like now I'm really hitting a stride with it, and I'm really motivated to do it, and so I'm excited. And I want to say that I'm afraid, but I'm really not. I am confident that I'm able to figure it out. That's been one thing that I've been trying to foster is like my belief in myself. That was one of the going along with like the comfortability of like coming into adulthood, is that the
Mm,
belief that I can figure it out, that I have the capability and like the knowledge and like work ethic to figure it out. And so, worst case scenario, I get done with these contracts and it doesn't look good, but I've got like some really good experience. I'm working on some like good, bigger projects with a client that I'm working with, helping him to like fully develop a company from on the online side at least, building websites, doing all these things that are going to add to my resume. And I like now I'm certified to be a project manager, and so I'll have some good like fully structured projects under my belt, and I'll just go back into the job market. Project management as a profession is growing and it's in high demand, and so
yeah.
I have a feeling I have a place there. And so worst case scenario, I figure it out. I'm just trying to hold on to that as long as I
No,
can.
dude, it's great. You
Yeah.
gotta do that when you're young, and you gotta do that when, um, I don't know, those experiences are much like your hike is where you figure out what you got in the tank. And um,
Yep.
so just to break that down a little bit, so you guys will specifically be doing, like, let's say, for example, a small business will come to you or you will come to them, and they are having something average as far as a website maybe, and how their sales are being navigated on that website. You're able to basically revamp that or build on the building blocks to get them a little bit more navigatable or XYZ. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I need to not forget this. It's called Reflex Digital with a PH instead of an F, reflexdigital.com. So yes, we would approach, or a company would approach us that is looking to improve their online presence in some way. So
Okay.
we specifically focus on like web development, creating good SEO and like a good e-commerce system for a company. Do we also do digital marketing ads? And we will help manage different platforms like Amazon, Walmart, Target, stuff like that. We have experience working with all those platforms with a couple different companies. We've worked on various web development projects, and so we can start from scratch. And frankly, like it's nicer to do it that way sometimes. But yes, we would. The way that our process works is that like we get connected to a company or like an entity that wants some assistance in this area. We would like conduct an audit, do a discovery call for free, and then come up with some like projects that we would work on for you. And kind of our philosophy has been that's been working well for us is that we want to do these as sort of like on a one-off basis. Like you want your website to increase in ranking. You want to start and create some good digital marketing campaigns, on Facebook, Google, whatever. We'll give you different like packages per se. And then our philosophy is we want you to be able to manage it and understand it yourself. And so that you
Mm,
have like you're empowered to do that kind of thing online. And we found that by doing that, and like making people, educating them on how to work things. And so like at the end of like a small project, we would give you documentation and like how to's. We would give you the ability to reach out to us if you have questions, um, and we want to give you the full package so that you don't necessarily need to be reliant on us. But what we found is that people end up coming back and like wanting to help, wanting us to do more for them.
Yeah.
And it kind of just goes along with that philosophy that like give them something tangible and useful, and they're more likely to come back and like help you in return.
Heck yeah.
And that's like was a big shifting point about a year ago that we've been kind of playing with, and that's been working well. And so yeah, that's kind of like a core philosophy that we've been using, and it's been working.
Well, and going back to your train analogy, I would say even before the pandemic, up until maybe 2015, that online presence, online e-commerce was beginning to hit its stride, but COVID just totally reinvented the wheel, and so I feel that you guys are in a great niche. I mean, there's got to be companies that are calling for this or should have it, because if you're serious about growing your business, you would need to have some kind of online presence to be able to execute. So I also enjoy being able to enable versus a one-time fee, let's say, because then you're always in the mix and building great relationships versus just that one-time transaction of, okay, we did our project. Good luck out there. Hit us up, if you ever care to chat again, because there is definitely a need from a Gen Z, or not Gen Z, excuse me, Gen Y, Gen X, their inability to be able to handle some of this stuff. Some of them are really good, but I feel like as much as they shit on millennials and Gen Z, they do appreciate our ability to carry the weight in that capacity.
Hmm. Yeah. And like a lot of the stuff that I do with clients is just like educating them on what things are. Like ChatGPT just popped up, and like it was kind of just part of my job to like understand at least at a core basic level of how that works and how it can be implemented and stuff like that. Like we had like a couple clients who would come to us and be like, "What is this? Like, what is it? Can you explain this?" Because we're just like those young kids that know technology. So let's ask
Right,
them. They might
right.
know. You know what I mean? And we are in the business to know. So but yeah, I totally agree that like I just feel like you just have to bring those people along. I feel a lot better about doing it that way as well. And as we found, like it's worked well for us to like um, be very giving, and people tend to give back. As much as you think that people are like ruthless capitalist people, especially with these like smaller businesses that we work with, like you give them something valuable and they want to like reciprocate it, whether it be referring us to a friend. We've been really fortunate to build good relationships with a core group of clients, and then they refer us out to their friends, and then we do projects for them. And they're like, hey, you can trust these guys. Like they're here to actually help you. You know what I mean? And like that's really worked, just been great, and that's something rewarding about it too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Just because, yeah, as much as they want to paint the picture of they being just society at large, this is a super blanket statement, but I just feel like people run away from word of mouth because they feel like the internet or some kind of reference will be the connective tissue. But that has been and will always be numero uno in
Hmm.
businesses, because if you can treat people well, they're gonna talk to people about you. But yeah, so with that, I'm first off glad that you're taking that stride. The next part of this conversation will be a little ad-libbed as far as AI, and you brought this up, and I couldn't quite remember if when we had talked in person, this was something that we were going to talk about, but I'd like to grab it right now. And this will probably be a concluding point for you, if that's
Cool.
cool. I feel like we've had a
Yeah.
good conversation up to this point. So I'll speak from my thoughts on AI, and then also would love to be educated on it. But though our lifetime, it will be very, very present. I'm a little scared. That could be just me being naive. But when you got guys, at a pretty high level saying, "Hey, we need to be careful with this stuff," that could just be a little bit of a fear tactic, which I don't think it would be. But maybe either educate me or just talk on your thoughts on initial stage AI to maybe in the next even 10 to 20 years, what that might evolve into. And I know
It's
this
not
is
even
kind
gonna
of,
take that long.
yeah, I was just gonna
It's not
say,
even gonna take that long. But I hear you.
go ahead.
Sorry to
Yeah,
cut you off.
no, you're good,
But
man.
so um, I can kind of speak on it in this space because we've been like wrestling with it, and like I mean, I'll admit I'm no expert on it, but I've definitely been paying attention because it's been like it's shooken up a lot of different industries, and this is an industry where like I think it will do a lot of good, but it'll probably also make a lot of people out of work. Um, so I think that it's I've like been listening to podcasts. Lex Friedman had a really good podcast with the founder of OpenAI. That made me feel better. And then he had a contradicting one the next week, and that didn't make me feel good. I think that we definitely need to be careful with it because it is literally like a Pandora's box. Like as soon as we turn on the system that is able to manipulate itself, that's something that we're not going to be able to undo. And so we do need to be extremely careful with it. And I just following kind of the news and like just trying my best to keep up with it with everything else going on. I do think that we're getting a little hasty. We don't know like the implications of it. We also don't know, you know, one big thing is like how many job like fields are going to be eliminated or not
Mhm.
needed from this, and like how do we protect those people from that? Like copywriters, for example, people make a living doing that, and now I will openly admit like I use ChatGPT to help come up with copy, and like I try my best to add some human elements because I have no proof for this, but I think that Google is able to tell that when there's AI generated content. I think that they know. um,
I feel like
I
they
can't
have to
prove
know.
that, but I could believe it. I could be convinced, so I try to make you create a human element. But that tool is just so insanely helpful. It's made me so much more productive. Like I don't have to sit and like I consider myself a decent writer, but this thing in 30 seconds will write a better, perfectly SEO keyword tuned piece of copy that will like perfectly capture the essence of what you're trying to say with just like one or two prompts. And like that took me 30 seconds what might have taken me an hour before. And that's an amazing thing. And
Right.
so like I think it has its place and it needs to be used as a tool, but we definitely got to be careful with it. I also think that it's one of those things where you need to get on the train and you need to or be left behind. And this is like a
Mm.
much more accelerated version of that. I think that it's incredibly valuable for people to learn about this and learn how to use it well at these infant stages. Because if you can follow it through its trajectory rather than 5 years from now when it's insanely different and better, oh, now I need to get caught up. It's going to be a lot harder to get caught up. And I think it is one of those technologies that is like very world changing for better or for worse. And so I think it's incredibly valuable to get on the train now.
Wow, man.
Is kind of my perspective of it. And so, yeah,
Um, so many ways we could run with that, but let me ask this direct question first. How do you use it outside of what you had mentioned with copy,
sure.
just in your personal life or maybe business life or both?
Sure. So, so like business, it does really like tedious tasks well. Like, take this like large amount of text, condense it into bullet points, and then give sub bullet points on expanding on those. I can take an article that I don't want to take the time to read, and it'll summarize it 30 seconds, and then I can like put it
Wow.
in a bite-size piece of a bite-size like uh, well-written piece that I can read in like 30 seconds, and then have a general understanding of it, so I can get through more content faster. I can get through more things quicker. Um, it The thing that like both makes it scary but also incredibly useful is it helps write code. So like
Mm.
if I need to come up with like an element of a website, and I am not like extremely I'm not extremely like versed in coding. I'm like a general knowledge of it and I can do basic things, but I work with a development team that we have a relationship with. And so they do the main like a lot of the harder stuff. But I can figure out a coding problem relatively quickly if I know the right ways to ask questions on there. And
Wow.
it'll spit out a piece of code at me, test it. Wow, that works. Bam. And now I don't have to take the time to like contact this team that I have a relationship with, make sure that they have time to do it, then like try to communicate what the thing that I want, and then we go back and forth, and this is now a day or two process to solve like a problem that I can just go on to ChatGPT, ask the right questions, and be able to like come up with a response. Um, as far as like personally too, like I've had a good run of being able to like when I can't articulate a thought, if I just start typing just stream of consciousness into it and ask it if it can help me like form this thought, it will help me, and it does a pretty
Wow.
good job. So like, it isn't exactly right, and obviously you got to take things with a grain of salt, but like even with personal things, I've like asked it personal questions, and it's like helped me come up with strategies to approaching things. I'm trying to think of an example.
Wow.
But so and I feel like I've even just scratched the surface with it. And like, um, but yeah, it really. So the free version GPT 3.5 only has the internet up till has the backlog of the internet up to 2021. GPT 4 has current backlog of the internet a lot, and it has just like tons more data. And so it works obviously much more effectively. But even just the internet up to 2021, you can just do so much with that information, and like that. And so I kind of try to use it in those ways, and I'm trying to find better ways to use it. It's amazing at coming up with ideas. It's not exactly creative, but if you throw the right prompts in of something that you kind of want, it helps get you moving in a direction of creation like not a lot of other things can. So
Wow.
that's some cool stuff about it.
I would say just being able to respect that about it. I think that's one thing that stands out to me right away. And I'm someone that is very unfamiliar with it. So as much as you were mentioning that we need to get on the train, it sounds like I need to buy my ticket to the train right now and start doing some self exploration. But this might be just a dumb question, but do you literally just type in go like chatgtp.com, or like how do you even access that?
So like Google OpenAI, and then like and then there will be ChatGPT as like it's like OpenAI. Yeah, Google OpenAI, it'll be the first thing that comes up.
Okay.
It was, I mean, OpenAI was the fastest growing, like ChatGPT was the fastest growing piece of software in history. It went in 1 month, it went from zero to over 1 million users in less than a month. Yeah. And
Wow.
that, I mean, now there's tens of millions of users now, but and so like it's gonna come up on Google pretty fast. You
Yeah.
just literally just create an account. I'm sure they sell your data. That's how they make money. But you know what? I will let Google's already got everything on me, and
Yeah.
so I'm just gonna I'll take this tool, especially if it benefits me the way that it has. So
100%. Yeah, I was gonna say, based on me watching the movie Snowden. I don't know if you have ever watched that
mhm.
or heard of it. That in combination of the Netflix special. God, what is the Netflix special that talks about that? Not social dilemma.
There we go.
Between
Yeah.
between those two, I have been fully convinced that they have everything that they want anyway. So it's like such a grander scale problem that I'm like, it's not going to affect me personally with them having my information and whatnot. But no, I'm definitely going to go and check this out because there was a guy I was hanging out with recently that he would type in for fitness. He would type in, here's my weight, here's this, here's that. This is what and then it generates like a month meal plan based on that. And I'm
hmm
like, what? Like, I got to get on that if that's the case because that's insane.
Yeah. A lot of stuff that's like doesn't require a lot of creativity, it's insanely good at. Like you could ask it for if you know the basic premise of like how to gain muscle, so you need to provide progressive overload and you need to go to failure. That's how you would grow muscle tissue that's generally recognized, right? You know that. You can type in all that information and say, hey, can you give me a workout regimen? Can you give me a workout regimen to like grow muscle? And then it'll give you a detailed like sets, reps, rest time. It'll give you everything that you need. And then so like instead of you using your like time and energy to like do something that doesn't require a ton of creativity, it's just like plug and chug. really
Okay.
good at that stuff.
Plug and
It's
chug.
really good at that stuff. If you have questions with Excel, it knows everything about Excel. It'll write a program for you to do exactly what you want in Excel. That might be something you could start with. I'm assuming
Yeah.
you work with spreadsheets. So yeah.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. And I just, I'm always someone that's like, oh, I wish I had an assistant to be able to look this up for me, so that way I don't have to. And it sounds like this could almost be a replacement, from that sense. But on a very concluding note on this though, before
Yeah.
we get wrapped up, so just gonna go out and say it. So how far away from iRobot Will Smith that we gotta make sure that we're not getting taken over?
From the average, like I am like a novice at best at understanding it. I think that we're not super close. I don't think. And I'm going off the podcast that I listen to with Lex Friedman and and Shaboy, and like I don't, but they kind of convinced me that it's not that close, but it is right around the corner, and it's something we got to
Mm,
prepare for. Um, ChatGPT, they had a long discussion, probably like 30, 45 minutes of that 3 hour podcast about is ChatGPT sentient, and they had like a philosophical discussion about like what would can constitute sentience, and like they kind of concluded that it isn't, and I would tend to agree with the experts. But I think it's coming a lot faster than we think, because we generally as humans think on more of a linear time scale and on a small uh, we just in general in life and just being a human, you think more linearly than exponentially, and this is an exponential growth curve type situation. And so it's coming a lot faster than we think. I don't think it's going to be next month, but I think that like the potential is there pretty quick. And so we do need to like kind of pull back a little bit and like kind of reassess, because I think that that's just very important. I tend to agree with Elon Musk on this one, that like, this is a potentially human ending thing.
mm.
And like if so I tend to lean more towards that side of the spectrum. So I think we got to slow down, but you also got to get on the train, man. You got to get on the
Yeah.
train, if you will get left behind. So
Yeah,
got to
it's
figure
gonna
out how to use it.
be well, and I think too about this timeline. So my grandfather recently passed away within the last maybe 2 years, we could say. In this motherfucker, there's no way that if he saw my smartphone, I mean, he is
Hmm.
absolutely just like this dude fought in World War II. Like he doesn't, there's no way he would have even understood that. And what terrifies me, but also is just so interesting, is just what that will look like when I'm in my 60s, when you're in your 60s, and what is even going to be the relationship at that point. Because to him, that's otherworldly. And to us, that's where it gets a little bit scary. Because, like, there's a Jordan Peterson video about essentially how this evolves into its 2D form. And then you put on your Oculus, and then it's potentially you're literally talking to another person, but it's an AI bot. That to me seems very, very close. And that's where I get a little bit terrified, because I know how addicting it is to get on social media, and the same kind of recipes are going to be available for people to kind of not prey on consumers, but in some ways, there's a lot of people that are sucked into some of these things because of lack of awareness. So that's where I'm like,
Hmm.
they could really manipulate a lot of different people, and that's where I'm like, damn, this could be really sketchy.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with you there, and like I think there's going to have to be like a companioning movement, which it might be advantageous with like the recent growth in popularity of like psychedelic therapies and stuff like that coming up similarly at the same time. I think that might be a very good coincidence, maybe if you want to call it, or synchronicity, because I think that those substances have a real ability to expand awareness and like connection to yourself and others, and that is going to be needed as we like go deeper and deeper into this, kind of going along the line of like the social media thing you were saying, that people, you just get sucked into it. You just get sucked into it, and it's hard to break out and like be aware of that. And I'm hoping that some of these therapies that are coming down the pipeline will help with people.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah, man. We'll leave that as a cliffhanger for our next episode. But
Awesome.
Austin, man, it was so fun to have you on here and talk shop a little bit. What was cool is that I learned as much as we had conversation, and that's the way I like it, because sometimes you get a little bit, stuffy, or not you, but you know what I'm saying. Like if it's too contextualized of a conversation, you can't allow
Yeah.
the creative work to go through. So, thank you guys for listening, and until next time, guys and gals.